it's going to be hard for the U.S. soccer president to go out. Any president to just step into the void and say, I'm for promotion relegation. Although I think somebody should. I really think that's where things will change in this country. And it's a hard thing to say, but I've been on this.
Why would they do it when every single owner of Major League Soccer is going to laugh at them?
Because it's not just about 20 owners or 22 owners of Major League Soccer.
They got to get the reins back.
100%. The federation.
Promotion versus relegation in the United States. There have been long discussions in American soccer about whether or not promotion-relegation system should be implemented in the American soccer pyramid. For example, should the bottom-placed Major League Soccer teams be relegated in the USL Championship, which is the second highest level of soccer in the American soccer pyramid? And should the top-placed teams in the USL then be promoted to the MLS? Major League Soccer in America is one of the few leagues around the world that does not have a promotion-relegation system. This episode discusses why that is, should promotion-relegation be implemented, and the pros and cons of all of it. I am your host, Kai Uchimura, also known as Coach Kai. Those that argue that promotion relegation need to be in place in the U.S. say that having this system will elevate the quality of soccer in this country and get it caught up with the rest of the world's major leagues. There will be much more intense competition, and it would force owners to put in more money for their teams to get the best out of their players and motivate their players from potentially getting relegated and not just tank and go through the motions. It would force owners to not be complacent. Those that oppose promotion and relegation implementation argue that having promotion relegation is just not feasible because MLS has not been established long enough compared to the other major leagues, and that there is not enough stability in American soccer for promotion relegation to happen. It has also been a long fabric in sports culture in the United States to not having promotion relegation regardless of which sport. The American sports culture when it comes to performing bad is to hopefully get a high draft pick come the next season. So if promotion relegation were to be implemented, this would overhaul the draft system potentially in the MLS. Which, I mean, there could be arguments for and against the draft anyway. Also, owners of the teams, when they first bought the teams, had an expectation that their teams would always be in the top division. It is also that buy-in culture that is ingrained in the sports culture in this country, as well as it takes millions of dollars in order to get a team in the first place. Owners and investors are afraid if their team gets relegated, that their club would go through significant financial troubles and would struggle to have high attendance due to this American mentality of not supporting teams in the top division, or of only supporting teams in the top division. Which I understand, money is very important. No team wants to get relegated. For example, if promotion relegation existed in MLS, for example, this past season in 2019, FC Cincinnati, which is one of the newest teams in MLS, they put in $150 million for them to exist, and they finished in last place during the 2019 MLS season. They would not want to get relegated after investing so much money to be a top division team. This happens often in other established leagues. There are several stories in which a team gets relegated from the top division, and it takes years and multiple owners before they return back to the top division. For example, Derby County is a soccer team in England. Back in the 2007-2008 Premier League season, they finished in last place and have since not returned back to the top league. And it's been over 13 years. The only promotion relegation culture that we have in the MLS and soccer in general in this country is honestly between the players. So if a player, for example, is doing extremely well in the USL, which is the second division, that player can get rewarded by being picked up and signed by an MLS team. For example, Mark Anthony Kaye of LAFC spent a couple of seasons in the USL with Louisville City, and they won the USL Cup, and therefore, he, elevated his profile and he signed with LAFC. And this also happens vice versa. Let's say a fringe MLS player who is struggling to find playing time with the first team or is just getting up there in age, they can hopefully either get loaned to a second division team or just sign with them permanently. In this case, Sinisa Ubiparipovic, who was somewhat of a journeyman back in his playing career. He played for New York Red Bulls and Montreal Impact, but he was never a star player. He was more of a squad and role player. And so by the time he was in his early 30s, he finished out his career with second division teams of Ottawa Fury and Indy 11 respectively. And this happens all the time. So back to the argument about promotion relegation, they are afraid that fans, or the owners are afraid that fans of relegated teams would not support them and not come to games when playing in the second division or when times are tough. I mean, times are tough right now in the country with the coronavirus. I honestly do not expect to see promotion relegation in MLS in my lifetime, and this just pushes it further back from any legitimate conversation. It is just the amount of money required to get a stadium and fund a team that requires a dedicated fan base and market. If there is a risk that you lose that market due to relegation, no investors will sink in the needed capital for the team that can see promotion relegation being implemented. Let's just say between USL and USL League One, I could see promotion relegation being potentially feasible. It just requires a lot of finances. I will say that there will come to a point that MLS will have to have a cutoff point on how many teams can be in the league. Right now, there are 26 teams in MLS. It will be increased to 30 teams in the next couple of years, with Charlotte, North Carolina, Austin, Texas, Sacramento, California, and St. Louis, Missouri all getting expansion teams. That will likely be the cutoff point from any other city trying to get an MLS team. Otherwise, you will seriously oversaturate the market and possibly dilute the player pool. America has a different business model compared to practically everywhere else in the world. As much as I would like to see promotion relegation in the MLS, I personally do not see promotion relegation happening and being feasible in the United States. And that concludes this episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. Until next time.